have 1 minute. Oh my goodness. Look at that. All right, gentlemen. Good evening, and I would like to call this meeting of the Temecula City Council to order. We can thank flautist, and that was beautiful, by the way, Ruth Dunlop, Saktil Orozco, Emily Schwank, that's a familiar name, and Bridget Schroll. Is that right? Thank you very much. That was beautiful. Okay, our invocation this evening is going to be offered by Pastor Harold Forbes of Lifeline International Ministries of Temecula Valley, and that will be followed by the flag salute by Mayor Pro Tem Matt Ron. Good evening, how are you?
Good evening,
So would you
Madam Mayor.
please stand with us?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening, and please join me in prayer. Father, first of all, we're so thankful for the incredible privilege that we have of living and working in a beautiful city like Temecula. We thank you for what is truly a blessed community. We ask your continued blessing and prosperity for every family, every resident, in every area of their life, and for the community as a whole. And Lord, for this council and the staff members here this evening who work so hard on our behalf, we thank you for them, and we ask for your blessing upon them in their work and in their personal lives. And Lord, we ask you to bless their families who make sacrifices like giving them up to us to serve us here this evening instead of spending time with them. And Lord, as they prepare now to deal with the business that they will see before them tonight, we ask you to strengthen them, give them grace, guide them, and give them the wisdom that they need to make right decisions for the betterment of our community, which we know is the intent of every one of their hearts. And we thank you for that. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Please join me in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ron. You may be seated. We have the privilege this evening of making a presentation of some certificates to a group of young ladies, the senior class 2017 of the National Charity League Temecula Valley Chapter. And until it, you want to do the roll call first? Mayor Pro Tem Ron's keeping me in line here. I'm so anxious to get to my National Charity League. So to make it extremely official, let's go ahead and do the roll call.
Councilmember Comachero.
here.
Councilmember Nagar. Councilmember Ron.
Hey, I'm here.
Councilmember Stewart.
Here.
Mayor Edwards.
Here. Okay. National Charity League, you know, I'm very familiar with charities in the Valley and nonprofits in the Valley, and I had not heard of this one until a couple of years ago. And I was honored to do a presentation for them at their senior graduation exercises, and I got to do it again this year. And I was really taken aback and so proud of what this organization does. It really strengthens families, it promotes families staying together, but it promotes mother-daughter activities together. And they do great things. They volunteer, they donate hundreds and hundreds of hours to the community as moms and daughters. And then there's so many other things that the chapter does that involve the entire family. And the graduation exercises were just lovely. It involved the girls giving a presentation via tape about what their plans and aspirations are and what they liked about charity and doing nonprofit work in Temecula, and then they have a dance with their dads, and then the moms come forward. So it's really wonderful for the families. So I would like to have the members of the National Charity League that are here this evening come up. If there are any of them here, come on, and I see you back there. And I have some certificates for you. And I'm going to read it very, very quickly. So this is to each one of you will get your own certificate, and I'm going to have Mayor Pro Tem Ron come down and present them to you. But here's what it says. City of Temecula Certificate of Recognition presented on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of the City of Temecula. And then your name. Senior Class 2017 National Charity League Temecula Valley Chapter. National Charity League is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster mother-daughter relationships in a philanthropic organization committed to community service, leadership development, and cultural experiences. Each girl participated in NLC's Senior Leadership Project Service from the Heart, a military baby shower for expectant families at Camp Pendleton. She dedicated her time volunteering for Community Mission of Hope and served as whatever office that you happened to serve or whatever committee you served on. And so you enjoyed being involved in an organization dedicated to helping out in the community. Your future plans include, and then we are going to, each one of you is customized, and this happens to be Madison's. So we know that Madison will be attending Cal Baptist University to major in psychology. We congratulate each of you on your graduation from high school and for your exemplary service to the National Charity League and to our community, and we wish you continued success in your promising and bright future. So as Mayor Pro Tem Ron comes down to present these to you, I want to personally thank you for everything that you've done for our community. You know, nonprofits really are the heart of the community, and they perform so many functions and services really that the city can't do or shouldn't do. You know, we need to rely on our nonprofits because volunteerism is really what creates community, a strong, healthy community. So we recognize everything that you've done, and I want you to turn around that way. Okay, so now you can't see, but everybody else can. So your pictures are going to be on the big screen, and so I'm going to give them in order. So raise your hand so Mayor Pro Tem will know which one. Madison Deal is first, thank you. And then we have Destiny Jimenez, Tyler Kamashian, Hannah Kaufman. Did you guys line up in order? Oh my gosh. McKenna Masoni, Macy Sparks, and Gianna Stacy. And we have a brave mom. You want to say a few words, Mom? Sure.
In here?
Yeah,
Or just
right
for-
there. Yep.
So I have served for 3 years as the GLA, and that's the grade level advisor for these beautiful, wonderful, intelligent girls. And they have dedicated so much time to this community and to our organization. And their senior project was the Service from the Heart at Camp Pendleton. They planned, organized, instructed. It was incredible. We probably serviced about 85 families. And each one of these girls are not only going on to a university or a Cal State, they are so intelligent, creative, athletic, and truly are what make this organization. And I just encourage more women and young girls, it starts in 7th grade, to get involved in National Charity League. And I'm gonna miss them so much, I'm gonna start crying. They really, truly are like my daughters, and their moms are such strong individual leaders as well. So I'm so honored. Good luck, girls, and thank you for having us.
Well, thank you. And we are very, very proud of you girls. Thank you very much.
I just want to say two last little words.
Sure.
Bella and Cassidy could not be here. Bella is actually at San Jose State. She's on a soccer scholarship, so she had to report early. And Cassidy is at the Naval Academy. So it goes to show you that these girls are not only intelligent, young, strong women, they're going off to do remarkable things in their lives.
And they're taking Temecula with them.
They are taking Temecula, and we hope that they will come back because I'm going to be here forever.
I know. So girls, remember to report in so we can hear of all
Yes.
the great things that you're
Absolutely.
doing. Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Congratulations. Okay, moving on to Do we have any public comments?
Madam Mayor, we do not have any generalized public comments on
All right.
non-agenda items.
Okay, then we can go straight to city council reports. And Stu, I see you in the queue.
Well, again, I attended the TV2E, the youth event that they put on. Basically, it was a camp. And it was a camp for young entrepreneurs. So basically kids who are high school age who wanted to start their own business. And again, I was so impressed by these kids because I took part in it was kind of like a Shark Tank event. So once they've created their business, they pitched it to the sharks. And so we were able to give feedback and criticism. But man, what a group of kids these were who had that entrepreneurial spirit. And we're fostering that. We're actually encouraging that in our youth in the city of Temecula, which is phenomenal if you ask me. Something I never knew existed when I was not on the city council, and now that I'm on, I'm seeing all these little things that the city does that really does mean a lot to the community long term, and to foster and help these kids their entrepreneurial spirit is just I love it. So anyways, that was my experience.
Oh, thank you, Stu. Matt?
Thank you. I didn't want to steal anybody's thunder if you're going to mention Mr. Fox this evening at all. But Community Service Commission yesterday evening did a wonderful ceremony and recognition of Dick Fox, who has served very honorably in a very important role with our city and the Temecula Valley Museum for, 15 years now. Very sad to see him go. I was able to at least give my regards on behalf of the city council and mayor, but wonderful, recognition for him. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate all the work that he does and all the volunteers and folks that work with the museum. Thanks.
And would you like to adjourn in his memory?
Absolutely. Thank you.
I wrote it down, and we will be happy to do so. He did serve Temecula.
More of his
well.
honor than memory. He's just
Yeah,
retired.
right.
So, yeah.
His memory as he
Absolutely.
moves on to
Yeah,
bigger
just
things.
Point of clarification.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, that was good. All right. So that's everybody. Then we can move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine, and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no discussion of these items unless members of the city council request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Number 1, waive reading of standard ordinances and resolutions. Number 2, approve the action minutes of June 27, 2017. Number 3, approve the list of demands. Number 4, approve the city treasurer's report as of May 31st, 2017. Number 5, approve the First Amendment to the Third Amended and Restated Joint Powers Agreement creating the Southwest Communities Financing Authority, or SCFA, as we lovingly call it, for the animal shelter. Number 6, approve the amendments to annual agreements for professional on-call services for the various needs for the Department of Public Works Capital Improvement Program, CIP, Division for fiscal year 2017-18. Number 7, approve the Department of California Highway Patrol Agreement for Construction Zone Enhanced Enforcement Program Services for Interstate 15/State Route 79 South Ultimate Interchange, PW04-08. Number 8, approve the First Amendment to the Agreement for Consultant Services with CASC Engineering and Consulting, Inc. for Temecula Park and Ride, PW06-09. Number 9, approve the agreements for consultant services with Wallace & Associates Consulting, Inc., Civil Source, Inc., and Falcone Engineering Services, Inc. for on-call construction management services for fiscal year 2017-18. And number 10, approve the Beyond Framework Fund Program funding agreements with the Western Riverside Council of Governments, or WRCOG, for 9 projects. So I will accept a motion and a
Move the
second.
consent calendar.
Second that.
I don't see any cues up right, there we go. So gentlemen, go ahead and push your buttons. And let's cast our votes. And that is unanimous. So we will recess the city council meeting to the scheduled meeting of the Temecula Community Services District.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to call this meeting of the Temecula Community Services District to order. Madam Clerk, we are all here, so we'll dispense with the roll. Do we have any public comment? Okay. Well, let's go to the consent calendar. Item 11 is approve the action minutes of June 27th.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And that does pass unanimously 5-0. We do have a public hearing item on the agenda tonight, so I'll read the rules for public hearings. Any person may submit written comments to the Community Services District before a public hearing, or may appear and be heard in support of or in opposition to the approval of the projects at the time of the hearing. If you challenge any of the projects in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city clerk at or prior to the public hearing. So we have one item tonight. Item 12 is an item to approve the Temecula Community Services District proposed rates and charges for fiscal year 2017-18. This is something that we must do every year by law. So who's going to do it?
I'll do that.
Ms. Jennifer.
Good evening. The Temecula Community Services District, which operates under the authority of the Community Services District law, provides a variety of services to city residents, including residential street lighting, perimeter landscaping, slope maintenance, recycling, refuse collection, and unpaved road maintenance within the city of Temecula. These services are collectively referred to as TCSD's service levels. Property owners pay only for the TCSD services used or made available to their property through separate rates and charges on their property tax bills. Each of the service levels have separate rates and charges that are calculated by the city's consulting firm, Albert A. Webb Associates, and are detailed in the engineer's annual levy report. At tonight's public hearing, staff is requesting the board to adopt the rates and charges established for each service level for fiscal year 17-18. Rates for service level B, residential street lighting, and service level R, unpaid road maintenance, are proposed to remain unchanged from the current rates of $25.68 for street lighting and $115.26 for unpaved road maintenance per single-family residence per year. Rates for service level C, or perimeter landscaping and slope maintenance, are proposed to remain unchanged from the current year for 27 of the 29 service zones. Through property owner elections, 2 of the 29 zones include an annual inflator equal to the lesser of CPI or 5%. For fiscal year 17-18, a 1.89% CPI increase is proposed for the 2 remaining zones as noted in the table. Rates for service level D, or residential recycling and refuse services, are calculated annually per the franchise agreement with CR&R. For 17-18, the rate is proposed to increase by $2.16 to an annual rate of $271.76 per household per year. The rate increase is a result of CPI and landfill tipping fee increases. Per Proposition 218, all property owners were mailed notifications of the public hearing on May 26th detailing the proposed rates and charges. On May 23rd, the TCSD Board of Directors approved a resolution of intention that called for the public hearing to be held tonight. And the anticipated revenue for all service levels is $10,376,917 as noted in the 2017-18 Engineers Annual Report. And this concludes my staff report, and staff, along with Heidi Sheppy and Charmaine McCarville from Webb Associates, are here for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jen. Do we have any questions? Staff, Marianne?
I have one. It's the same one I ask every time we do CFD fees. These fees are as a result, true or false, these fees are as a result of communities wanting to assess themselves to pay for services that the city renders for landscape maintenance or whatever. So these are not fees necessarily imposed by the city.
True.
Okay, just want to make that clear.
Other questions? I have one. Concerning service level D, trash and recycling. We know we have a 10-year evergreen contract with CR&R, and part of that contract allows them to recoup the cost of certain jumps in fuel costs. Fuel's down pretty low right now. Is there any mechanism where we're able to reduce the rate because fuel costs have gone down?
Looks like Luke wants to answer this
I can
one.
answer that. The franchise agreement was recently amended a year or two ago to remove the increase in fuel costs from the calculation because of the new plant that they put in to generate their own fuel. So that is now
okay.
not part of the fuel calculation or the fee calculation.
Sure. So up or down, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
at
matter.
this point. Okay, thanks. I wasn't aware of that, so thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Do we have any requests to speak? We have none. Would anybody like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Colleagues, what is your pleasure?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Edwards, second by Dr. Ron. Please cast your votes. And that motion does carry unanimously. And that takes us to Mr. Hawkins.
Mr. President.
And the director's report.
Yeah, just a simple thanks to all the departments that supported TCSD in making the fourth a truly outstanding community event, and a fantastic job by Don and our special events team. And in this case, the special events team is the entire department, so kudos and thanks to everyone. Also, if I can, just similar to all of our signature special events, the TCSD president and I typically share thoughts on how we can make next year's event even better, and which we will. And so we're looking forward to that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Kevin. And Greg, anything for us?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Okay, do we have any board of director comments or reports?
I would just like to say thank you for another fabulous 4th of July. Parade was magnificent. You maintained the weather. It was cool during the parade. I know there was a huge crowd down at the sports park. Fireworks were tremendous. We get the benefit of watching them from our driveway. So another great job. So thank you, Community Services.
Anything else? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any objection? Then we'll stand adjourned.
All right, then I'm going to reconvene the Temecula City Council meeting, and this evening we have a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and read the disclaimers. Any person may submit written comments to the City Council before a public hearing or may appear and be heard in support of or in opposition to the approval of the projects at this time of the hearing. If you challenge any of the projects in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city clerk at or prior to the public hearing. And first we have item number 13. Conduct public hearing number 4 regarding the transition from at-large to by-district elections. So could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Over the last several years, cities, school districts, and community college districts throughout the state of California have been changing from at-large to by-district elections to either comply with the California Voting Rights Act of 2001, otherwise known as the CVRA, and or to avoid litigation. The full transition process is set forth in the Elections Code. On April 25th, 2017, the City Council authorized the transition of the city's election system from at-large to by-district. On May 9th, 2017, the Council adopted the Resolution of Intent and the Resolution of Criteria. In addition to the adoption of these resolutions, the law also requires that 2 public hearings be conducted prior to the maps being drawn, and that 2 public hearings be conducted after the maps are drawn, and sequencing is published for the specified time period in law. On May 9th, May 23rd, and June 27th, the City Council conducted 3 of the required 4 public hearings. Tonight, the Council is asked to conduct the last of the required public hearings. All hearings were publicly noticed, and detailed information about the districting process is also provided on the city's website. While there is an action item to districting under the council business portion of this agenda later this evening, there is no council action associated with this particular item other than to conduct the public hearing itself. This concludes staff's report, and we're happy to answer any questions. We do have several speaker cards.
All right, thank you. So council members, do you have any questions? Mike, was that?
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
So the the action out of this agenda item will be what, a selection of a map or a receive and file till the next agenda item?
Correct. This is only for the conduct of the public hearing. No action item other than the conduct of the public hearing. Any action item is later in the ordinance adoption and map selection under item number 14.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? In that case, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have any requests to speak?
We do, Madam Mayor. We actually have 6 speakers. The first speaker is Martha Howard, to be followed by David Maddox.
Hi, Martha. Come on up. How are you?
Great, and you?
Good.
Wonderful. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and supporting staff. My name is Martha Howard. I live in Temecula, and I'm the Latina Association of Riverside County founder and president. I'm here to touch bases with you on 2 important points in regards to the at-large and the redistricting situation. This council has left us, the Temecula residents, with the difficult task to select from redistricting maps without access to professional and in-depth community involvement. In regards to the maps, districts 1, 3, and 4 on each map are basically the same. The big differences are in District 2 and 5 on each map. Based on the numbers reported for these districts, I have selected the yellow map. My second point is in regards to Ordinance 17. As I read on the agenda, if approved tonight, it does not make any provisions for future redistricting cities and commission. Therefore, I'm proposing that such provision be included in the text before any vote is taken. Furthermore, may there be any doubt as to how to make those changes tonight, I am proposing that we, the community, present this issue to the Board of Supervisors on July 25th, 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, would you like to, comment, or Randy, would you like to comment on any provision or protocol that would be associated with verbiage?
Well, I think the speaker expressed her preference for one map. I think the council is well within your rights to request the staff to look at a potential advisory commission or citizens commission to look at the redistricting after the next census. By law, once the census has been held, the council then needs to re-look at the district boundaries in light of that census. At this time, I think you could make a motion to direct staff to do that. To be quite honest with you, there's a lot of different aspects that go into that commission. Staff would be happy to begin that immediately, but it's really not something that we could do in the short time frame we have at this particular time.
All right, thank you. And, I will make a comment on that when it's time for us to comment, but I would reassure Mrs. Howard that that's typically the way Temecula does business, is through workshops and community support and commissions or ad hoc committees, things like that. So we were so constrained by time. This time we had such a short window. So, and we can, I can clarify that a little bit more for you. So could we have our next speaker, please?
The next speaker is David Maddox, to be followed by Bernie Truax.
David, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
Good.
All right. So I'll try to keep my comments brief because I think I've probably already taken enough of your time with the written statement I submitted. To sum that up, the maps are remarkably well balanced. You know which one came out ahead for me, but I recognize that there are a lot of different subjective criteria for you to judge and many different perspectives to consider. I'm going to focus my comments tonight on just a very narrow slice of that written statement, specifically the communities of interest. The way I analyze this criterion is to break it down into 3 component questions, which you can then apply to each district. First, which communities make up the core of the district? Second, what are the defining characteristics of the district? And third, which of the surrounding communities best complement the core and exemplify the character of the district? So let's apply this to District 1, just to run through an example. No matter which map is adopted, District 1 will contain the neighborhoods of Wolf Creek and Red Hawk. I would consider these to be the core of District 1. And by the way, that's not to suggest that one neighborhood is more important than the other. These so-called core neighborhoods just happen to be situated in such a way that the various map options pivot around them. All right, the second question then is, what are the defining characteristics of this southern district, let's call it? Actually, I think there are some hints to be gleaned from the I-15 branding project put forward by the Visit Temecula Valley group. For anyone at home who might not be familiar with that project, there's a proposal to brand the I-15 corridor with artistic features which highlight some of the cultural characteristics of the valley. And they didn't decide these characteristics arbitrarily. They actually held a number of workshops and solicited quite a lot of input from the community. And I happen to agree with a lot of what they came up with. So what I think of when I think of the southern area of Temecula is the cultural influence of Pechanga. I think of the historic Vell Ranch. And I also think back to my time growing up in Temecula in the 90s, back when the region south of Temecula Parkway was mostly unincorporated. Red Hawk and Vell Ranch used to be sort of their own thing with their own commercial district. And that leads back to the third question, which of the surrounding communities best complement the core and exemplify the character of the district? I would argue that when you look at the history of how the south side of the valley was developed and the process that Red Hawk and Vell Ranch both went through in becoming annexed to the city, Vell Ranch is a natural complement to the District 1 core. Granted, Red Hawk and Vell Ranch had their cultural and organizational differences back in the early 2000s, and that's why they joined the city a few years apart from each other, but I believe that they have more in common than not. So I think if you run through this exercise for each district, you'll probably come up with some different answers than I did, and I'd be really interested to hear your take on each of your respective districts. So thank you again for your time, and I look forward to hearing the council's discussion.
Thank you, David.
The next speaker is Bernie Truax, to be followed by Angel Garcia.
Mr. Truax, good evening.
Good evening, council. My favorite mayor. Prettiest mayor we've ever had, you know.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, I just wanted to take a moment and tell the council that I was very supportive of the idea that we finally are going to do the districting and take us out of the jeopardy of the lawsuits. The maps are obviously take a lot of work. I've kind of boiled it down to two that I look at, orange and yellow, And one of the clear things in here is roads seem to be kind of like our natural barriers or boundary lines. And as I looked at the two differences between yellow and orange, it seems that the orange map does that a little better and keeps two neighborhoods together and gives them a clear dividing line as it looks to District 2 being everything the east side of the freeway versus part of it east side and part of it belongs to District 5. And the little corner that's up in the top part of District 5 seems to separate that neighborhood where they probably relate to that neighborhood more and work together more. So my personal recommendation, and I know the council has a lot more to consider than this, is that the orange map made sense to me. And it would be my hope you see that when you make your decisions. But thank you very much for making the decision to do it and to go on with our great community. Great job by all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie.
The next speaker is Angel Garcia, to be followed by Lene Turley-Treo.
Mr. Garcia, good evening.
Mayor Edwards, pleasure to be speaking before this council committee this evening. First, let me say, probably as the only speaker tonight, I've had the opportunity to be a candidate in the past 2 election cycles with all of you, and I'm sure we might have a difference of opinion, but I definitely appreciated the lively and candid dialogue we had during those forums. So at first, I am going to express I am disappointed that we are going to district elections. At-large was had definitely its advantages, as candidates from all sides of the city of Temecula can join the race and open up a dialogue and challenge the incumbents. So with that being said, I will continue with, I am surprised that Councilmember Nagard did not propose an ad hoc committee, as he has for all other things, to the exception of this. I am surprised that there wasn't greater outreach efforts for this item as there was for Measure S. The current 5-district proposal is nothing more than an injustice and a miscarriage of democracy by not allowing Temeculans to choose their mayor at large. And I refuse to forfeit that right to vote for a mayor. In all honesty, what would be wrong if there was to be a separately elected mayor like Jeff Comachero? All the other cities that Temecula sought to reciprocate have a mayor and 4 council districts. Why that's not the approach this time is beyond me. What I will conclude with is, how many of you are disadvantaged by any of these district proposals?
The next speaker is Lene Turley-Trejo, to be followed by Ira Robinson.
Lene, good evening.
Hello. Nice to see you all. Good evening, City Council members, Mayor Edwards, and city staff. My name is Lene Turley-Trejo. Our family moved to Temecula almost 30 years ago. Can't even believe it. It's been gone fast. Through the years, my husband and I have been busy raising our 4 sons, providing for our family, and being involved with our church, the school district, and the city. We truly love this city. I know there are others that care about the city and this districting vote tonight, but may be out of town, not feel like they have enough information to speak on the issue, or just trust that you'll make the right decision. I am here tonight to speak on the districting issue on the agenda. Unfortunately, a city like Temecula that strives for unity does not need districts of division to be able to make good decisions for the entire city. The word unity is actually embodied in the word community. Since that decision has already been made, I would like to share my reasons why the purple map is the preferred districting map. First of all, I'm going to put this up here.
Good, because I'm searching for mine on my phone, and so I'll be able to see it better that way. Thank you.
That's the school district.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that helps, but this is a copy of the TVUSD districting map. And I wanted to give each of you guys a copy of this because it was really eye-opening to me to be able to look at that and compare that with the maps that we have. And it resembles the purple map more closely than any other map. And I realize that TVUSD has to include unincorporated areas where the city doesn't. But the point is that the school communities are kept intact. So that's my first reason, is that the purple map is more closely aligned with the school district. The second reason is that most families are close with their school communities, elementary, middle school, and high school. At least that was my experience. And in working together for what is best for their children. So I started thinking about it, that this would hopefully transfer to their new city community or district. The third reason is that both the yellow and orange maps divide up the south end of the city, where this area should naturally be one district, as a previous gentleman spoke about, Red Hawk and Bell Ranch. This district includes all the feeder schools for Great Oak High School and is shown as trustee area number 5 on the school district map. The fourth reason, and one positive result that I see from districting, there may be others, but this is what I see, is that the city and the school district could work more closely together to meet the needs of the community in regards to the strengthening of the family. I think that we can all agree that there is not one perfect map, and that life would be better and simpler if we could just work together as one community without division. Before you tonight is a vote on a very important issue that I really see as something that's going to change Temecula. And as a longtime involved resident of the city, please consider my thoughts and reasons as you discuss and as you vote tonight. Thank you for your time, and especially thank you for all that you do to help make Temecula a city that families want to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lene.
And the last speaker is Ira Robinson.
Mr. Robinson, how are you?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff. I'm Ira Robinson. I live in Temecula. I want to change the focus a little bit and point to the purpose of the California Voting Rights Act of 2001. The purpose of the act is to prevent at-large elections from being imposed or applied in a manner that impairs the ability of a protected class to elect candidates of its choice and its ability to influence the outcome of an election. It's designed to further the interest of or prevent detriment to the interest of protected classes. That's all it does. Doesn't have to do with favoring political parties, doesn't have to do with favoring school districts. It has to do with protected classes. When we look at the demographics in this city, we see that the major demographics, if we are talking about protected classes, includes Hispanics and Asian Americans. All of the other numbers in the protected class category are too small to consider in a city of 100,000. Some people think about these protected classes and worry about how the city is going to grow in the future and how we ought to protect those classes and how we ought to draw the maps. It's unimportant to do here because these maps expire in 2020. We get to do the right thing in 2020, hopefully, and get whatever result the then population and then population trends suggest would be in place. So I believe that the most favorable map for protected class members, specifically Hispanics and Asian Americans, is the yellow map. And on that basis, I recommend the yellow map. Thank you. I submitted other comments, but you have those in writing.
Yes, thank you. And that's the last speaker? All right, thank you. And want to make sure, last speaker? All right. So, council members, any comments? None? Let's see who I have. No comments?
I'll make a comment.
Jeff? Oh, Mike. Mike punched in.
And I'll defer to Jeff, but I'm just wondering, just the way this is set up, I mean, I have many comments and a few questions, but it might be more apropos on the next agenda item. So really, what's the pleasure of our council? Are we just to receive and file this and move on to the next item? Is that, if that's the case, I'll move to receive and file this.
Really what we're
I'll
looking...
withdraw my comment. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Right.
What we're looking for is to conduct a public hearing, number 4, regarding the transition from at-large to by-district elections.
So if I may make, that's my motion, and I'd like to just make a quick comment.
All right.
Second the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, and Mike, comment.
Thank you. Everybody who spoke, thank you for speaking. Everybody who sent emails in and gave comments, I appreciate you doing that. I know we asked for that specifically at our last meeting. I just want to thank you for doing that. And duly noted, everything that was presented.
Okay, now Jeff?
No, I will withdraw the comment. I'll pick it up in the next
Okay, we're going to
agenda
wait.
item. Yeah.
Call for the question.
Okay, so this is a just receive and file item, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do you want us to register button votes? Okay, and opposed? Register none. All right, thank you very much. And now we can move on to council business, which is item number 14. Introduce an ordinance amending the Temecula Municipal Code providing for the election of city council members by district, establishing district boundaries, identifying district numbers, and establishing the election order of each district. All right, could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, as stated earlier this evening, over the last several years, cities and school districts throughout the state have been changing from at-large to by-district elections to comply with the CVRA and/or to avoid litigation. On April 25th, the City Council authorized the transition of the city's election system to by-district. 4 public hearings were held on May 9th, May 23rd, June 27th, and the last earlier this evening pursuant to the Elections Code. On May 9th, 2017, the Resolution of Intent and Resolution of Criteria was also adopted. The criteria utilized to draw the draft maps specifically included the following. Number 1, each district shall contain nearly equal population as required by law. Number 2, each district shall be drawn in a manner that complies with the federal and California Voting Rights Acts. Number 3, no district shall be drawn with race as the predominant factor in violation of the Supreme Court decision of Shaw versus Reno. Number 4, each district shall consist of contiguous territory in as compact form as possible. Number 5, each district shall respect communities of interest to the extent possible. Number 6, each district border shall follow visible, natural, and man-made geographical and topographical features to the extent possible. Number 7, each district shall attempt to avoid head-to-head contests between incumbents insofar as this does not conflict with federal or state law. And number 8, districts known to be areas of higher than average population growth in the 2 to 5 years following boundary line adjustments may be underpopulated within the population deviation amount permitted by law. All 3 of these maps meet this criteria. Each map is equally valid, and there is no preferred map from a criteria perspective. The 3 maps show 3 significantly different ways in which the federal requirements can be met and the traditional districting principles can be balanced against one another. The proposed maps were drawn and published as required in between the 2nd and 3rd public hearings. The sequencing of the elections was also published as required by law. Specifically, proposed districts 1, 3, and 5 will be on the ballot in 2018, and districts 2 and 4 will be on the ballot in 2020. The next step in the transition to effectuate the change from at-large to by-district elections is for the council to select a map for adoption and approve the introduction of the related ordinance. The second reading of the ordinance will occur at the next regularly scheduled meeting of July 25th. The ordinance will become effective immediately upon adoption pursuant to Government Code Section 36937A because it is an ordinance relating to an election. It is important to note that redistricting is required every 10 years consistent with the completion of the census. As the next census is in 2020, redistricting will be required in 3 years and every 10 years thereafter. Based on council and community feedback at the previous public hearing and earlier this evening, staff will be researching and bringing back for council consideration options associated with creating a redistricting board or a commission. At this time, it is recommended that the council receive any additional public comment and conduct their deliberation on map selection and ordinance approval. Public comments received for the record via email were previously provided to the council upon receipt. Following council deliberation, staff will ask for a voice vote for map selection and an electronic vote for ordinance approval. This concludes staff's report, and we are happy to answer any questions.
All right, council members, do you have any
Madam Mayor,
questions?
if I could.
Sure.
With respect to the ordinance, we have 2 changes that we'd like to propose to the council. On page 2 of the ordinance in section 2.08.028, in subsection A, that last paragraph needs to be revised to correct a couple of typos. The City Council shall hold a public hearing on the proposed district boundaries as required by Elections Code, section 21607, prior to the introduction of an ordinance adjusting the district boundaries. And then in subsection C, the text will remain the same, but the second paragraph should be separated out as a separately numbered paragraph D for clarification. And my thanks to Mr. Robinson for catching those, and we'll incorporate them into the ordinance when it's introduced.
So there are no substantive changes
No substantive
to either
changes.
of those items?
That's
They're
correct.
more clerical in nature?
Yeah,
All
and
right.
for clarification.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. All right, council members, any questions?
Yes.
Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. Just one for now. The ordinance goes into effect immediately, and certainly we know that they're being implemented for voting purposes. Is it to be presumed that if it goes into effect immediately, council members would immediately be district representatives?
No. The council members will not effectively represent their districts until they are elected from their district.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? No? Stu, are you looking at me?
Are we to the discussion?
No, we're at questions. Okay. All right, then, do we have any public comments? And I know we've heard a number of comments to this issue, but
I do not have any additional public comments for this particular item. They were all lodged under item number 13.
okay, and that's fine. So we've all made notes, and those comments are duly noted, as are the comments that were received via email and forwarded us. All right, so now it's time for discussion. And Mike.
Today's my lucky evening. You know, I certainly need to hear the opinion of my council colleagues, and so going first doesn't necessarily afford that, but I want to say that after my comments, I still want to remain open and hear what the rest of my colleagues have to say. And these comments are my own, so I'll speak on my own behalf. If I allude that, if I say we, I really mean we. If a we slips in there, I really mean me. No one likes being forced to do this. I don't think this is a good idea for Temecula. I think it's divisive for Temecula. Temecula does just fine with at-large elections. Unfortunately, we've been put in a position where we suffer great vulnerability if we don't do this by suffering the fate of being sued. We've never been scared before of being sued, and we've never walked away from a fight, except that it appears that this fight, every indication is one that we can't win. Even though we have a lot of people saying, well, fight anyway, I have a hard time, particularly coming out of a Measure S election, going ahead and saying we're willing to risk $1 million or $2 million, not only exposure of attorney's fees to a prevailing party, but paying our own legal fees as well to fight a battle that we can't win. So here we are having to go to districts as it relates into elections. I further have a problem with it because it will bring politics into just about every decision. I know some speakers in the past have said, well, why don't we see the positive part of this? And I suppose that maybe somewhere there is, but really, I feel that having represented the city at large, all of us, you've got all the citizens have gotten the best of representation. Now it becomes quite possible district over city. If something is proposed in my district and my constituents don't want it, it's going to be expected for me to fight on behalf of my constituents. However, that may not be in the best interests of the entire city. There you have the wedge. And that can run the gamut when it comes to parks, when it comes to new development, when it comes to road improvements, allocating CS funds, allocating CDBG funds, in dealing with our nation to the south, Pechanga, in dealing with things like a mall expansion, noise ordinances in Old Town, when we have residences versus business. It really becomes problematic. It starts to become problematic in all of our subcommittees, where we have to begin to start to separate out who really has a stake For instance, with the infill land use committee, it's Mayor Pro Tem Ron and I, but at some point, if that belongs in somebody else's district, who's the responsible party? It creates a whole lot of questions. We're up to answering them. But I think we're just too small of a city really to do this and have it work very well. If we're a city like Los Angeles, which is very large and highly populated, you can see the wisdom. But a city of 100,000, 114,000 like we are, I believe it does more harm than good. We have always been a diverse council. I know in this case we're talking about protected classes, but even when our population was less, we had Hispanics on the council, we've had blacks on the council, we've had Jews on the councils, Arabs, whites, ladies. I just really don't think that we've had a problem electing a diverse city council. Let's see. I remember, this will be my last comment for the time being. I remember a few years ago we dealt with what was known as the Summer House Project. I want you to consider that for a second. That was transitional housing. It was a decision made by the entire city council, and then a decision, not to do it that was made by the entire city council. But can you imagine if that was, let's say, actually, it would have been in my district and my constituents didn't want it, and I would have fought vehemently for my constituents. But that wouldn't stop 3 other council members from saying, yep, we're going to put it in your district because we don't want it in ours. It just inserts politics into everything where it's just not necessary. So after all this is said and done, okay, and maybe as part of the motion, I'm going to ask that maybe part of the motion, I'll have to see how things pan out, that we bring back another agenda item within 30 days to begin the process to create a set of policies and procedures to the degree possible that nullify this divisiveness, so that the only thing that we're dealing with in relation to the Voting Rights Act and choosing a map is strictly voting. And that way we can keep the integrity that our city has enjoyed. To that end, from my point of view right now, it really doesn't matter what map's adopted for a couple of reasons. Because if I have my way, and I'm going to fight very hard for it with this council, again, we're going to establish policies in which this council continues to represent the whole city, so we don't have that divisiveness. And it will go into place just strictly to abide by the Voting Rights Act. And so it will be for voting only. So that's my 2 cents for the time being, but I really do want to hear, I do have a map preference, but I'd like to hear, my map preference is the yellow map from hearing from everybody, but really, at the end of the day, I don't think it matters too much. And my last comment is the maps are going to be redrawn in a few years anyway. So that's it for now.
All right, thank you, Mike. And Jeff, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mike, for so succinctly talking about where we are and where we must be. I agree with just about everything you said, maybe all of what you said. I do want to emphasize as well, just to expand on what Mr. Nagar said, that we're really not creating 5 different cities here. I think it's important to note that. We're creating 5 voting districts. And how well the city remains homogenized is really going to be up to us and those who come after us.
Yep.
If the will is there to remain one city with one objective, looking out for the rights and benefits of all the citizens, I do think it can be done. But the will has to be there. And it's easy to see over time, maybe it's after all of us are no longer sitting here, as new council members are elected by their constituents in their district, that it will be more difficult to remain unified. But I do think that we have to send the message on the early stages now that that's a primary objective. And I would go as far as to say the next time we amend our general plan to include that as a general plan objective, as we do with many other objectives. So There has to be a will to do that, and if that will is strong enough, I think we can. It's going to be tricky going down the road, but let's get into the maps. That's what we need to discuss. The interesting thing to me is that we've received quite a bit more input over the last couple of weeks than we got here tonight, mostly via email or website comments. And what I find most interesting is that it's, as it was tonight, all over the board. I didn't keep a tally, but it seemed to me that there were just about the same number of comments on all three colors, which says a couple of things. It says to me, one, that the consultants did a very good job in adhering to what they needed to adhere to and in creating three maps, any of which could be viable. So how do you separate them? Well, I tend to look for little things because there are no big things, except in one case. For me personally, I'm going to eliminate the purple map. And I have two reasons for that. If you look at the map, geographically, from a landmass perspective, it's very much off kilter. One district, I think it's District 2, looks like it has just about half the landmass in the city. It may be a little less than that. I don't know for sure. I didn't calculate it. But it's very substantial. And while it still has an equal amount of population, there still is an inequity there in my mind that one council member is representing so much of the geography because things go on the land, not only with the population. So that's one reason. The other reason that I'm discarding that map is because it goes from just about the southern border of the city to the northern border of the city. And in my mind, those are very different sets of parameters, different demographics. And from what we've heard, it's the purpose of the map construction to create districts that are basically communities of interest, that have similar interests, similar demographics, similar all the things that we heard. So, so I don't see that as a viable option, and if that's just me, it's just me, but that's the way I see it. So that leaves us down to yellow and orange. And I've looked very carefully at the differences between yellow and orange, and there aren't very many. They're really very, very similar. One of the things that we heard was it's important to have natural barriers, and one of them being roads. And I agree with that. I think it's important. In the case of the yellow map, I like the fact that in the northern part of the city, in District 5, Highway 79 North, Winchester Road, bisects the districts. I think that's about as major a road as we have, not counting the freeways. So that to me was important. And then, you know, I think the first thing we all looked at, I know the first thing I looked at is, where's my house? I mean, we know that we each, you know, we don't overlap, and the one thing I found in the orange map is that my neighborhood, my community, is bisected. Now, we don't have an HOA in my community, and so the community bands together in other ways, and it is a very close-knit community. So while I'm not here making the case that, you know, let's discard the orange map because it bisects my community, it's not what I'm saying. But I understand, as I think we all do, what that means to a community, whether it's my community or somebody else's community. And so that was important to me. So those are really the key differences I saw. There are some good things, certainly, about the orange map as well. But to me, the yellow map really is the one that takes precedence in my mind over the others. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jeff. And Stu.
Yes. Well, I agree with pretty much everything Jeff just said, with the exception of I like the orange map. And for multiple reasons. One, if you look at it aesthetically, it's a well-balanced city. And I actually like the fact that there is bleed over into communities with two city councilmen. I go the opposite argument that let's keep communities together so they can vote on one particular city councilman, when in fact, I think if it gets down to fair representation, the more city councilmen that is representing an HOA, the better. So, you know, I'm looking at Meadowview where I live, And it's part of that would be in District 5. But I kind of like that idea. Same with Chardonnay Hills. Part of that is in District 3. Part of Vale Ranch, which is basically south Temecula, bleeds over from 2, and 1 is basically all of the rest of South Temecula. So aesthetically, I'm looking at it, it looks just very well balanced, and the fact that 2 city councilmen are going to represent a particular HOA is a good thing in my opinion. And, you know, just as far as infrastructure issues too, you know, it's always better to have that second councilman that's going to be on an HOA's side or a couple of HOA sides, because basically we're going to be representing probably 4 or 5 different HOAs in each of these maps. So I personally like Orange for that very reason, that it intersects and it kind of weaves the city together in a way that it's going to force us all to work together too. I don't want to be wholly responsible to, say, Meadowview or Nicholas Valley or Roar Ranch. You know, though Roar Ranch is basically entirely just because of the way of the map. But that's what I'm saying. I do like the bleed over effect that it forces multiple city councilmen to work together. So that's why I like Orange best.
Mike, he has a question, so.
Just real quick, I find your comment intriguing and definitely worthy of consideration. How would you approach it if the 2 council members didn't agree? It works when they agree, but what if they disagree? How do you foresee that?
Well, I mean, based on what though? I mean, what would we be disagreeing on? You know, so it's a question you can't really answer until it actually happens. I don't know where you were coming from.
I'll put it another way.
Yeah.
If there's virtue in having 2 council members represent, let's say, a split HOA, if there's virtue in it, which is what I heard you say,
right.
The opposite of that would be some form of detriment, equally so. And I'm just, and I like the first part. I see a virtue. Could there be a detriment? In other words, is there a situation where it works, and is there a situation where it doesn't work? That's all. And it's not a trick question. I am intrigued by what you're saying. It makes some sense.
Well, you know, for instance, roads. Roads are the thing we're putting a lot of emphasis on now that Measure S passed. You know, we're basically sprucing up the city. And to have 2 city councilmen now fighting for or representing an HOA who has very poor roads, like we do in Meadowview. You know, it would be better if I had a buddy or somebody that I could, you know, and you know, we probably would be on committees together. Whatever projects are happening in a particular section of town, I think we already kind of started thinking about that, you know, at least one of the members would be from that district that project or whatever was going to be part of. And in the case of a bleed over situation where you have 2 city councilmen in a particular, you know, HOA, then that would be a natural committee right there. You wouldn't have to look outside. So, you know, I know there could be detriments, but I don't know. I can't answer that until a specific situation would be presented. So,
thanks, Stu.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Jeff?
Stu, it's time to question you. I guess
Yeah.
we're all getting questioned. I just, and it is intriguing what you said. I mean, it's hard to argue with the fact that 2 representatives could be better than 1. It's why we have 5 now, and it works.
Right, exactly.
You know, so I have no argument with that. But I do question, we've been given a list of criteria, and number 5 on that list is preserving communities of interest.
Right.
How do you reconcile that with the idea of dividing, or are you saying that dividing HOAs maintains communities of interest?
No, but
I'm not sure.
If you look at Orange, it doesn't really divide communities entirely. Look at Meadowview. It divides, it basically puts a small section of Meadowview in 5. So in District 4, which would be my district, most of Meadowview is intact. But there's a bleed over effect for District 5, which would be you. And same down here at Vale Ranch. You've got District 2, who bleeds into basically South Temecula, where District 1 basically is all of South Temecula. So I like that. So basically between those two councilmen, they know and they hear, and they're going to get probably all the complaints and the things that need to be done in South Temecula. In that, they're going to go naturally to the councilman in District 1 and 2. So, and like I said, you're going to have, who's number one? Who is one? Oh, Matt. So Matt and Mike, I mean, if there's a situation somewhere along the 79 corridor, which basically you guys split until the bleed over happens after Red Hawk Parkway, you guys are going to be the natural people to, the go-to guys, basically. So that's why I like that. I like the fact it's still keeping basically the neighborhoods intact with just a little bit of bleed over. Same with District 3. If you look at that, Mike bleeds into Paloma del Sol. Just a little bit, you know, just a few, you know. So I like the fact that it integrates the community, as it doesn't segregate. It doesn't make little islands. It literally forces us all to work together, or at least two councilmen to form a little bond, basically. Because
Well, it's a common interest.
Common interest, exactly.
I think there's some merit to that. My fear would be that forcing, where there's overlap, forcing two or more council members to work together may also be two council members at war with each other.
Do you think it would be a force, though? I don't think so.
I think the potential, I like you, I don't know until it comes up, but I think the potential is there for that, and that would concern me. That's all. Thank you, Stu.
Ready, Matt?
Sure.
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, nice, robust conversation this evening. I wanted to start out with just a quick comment to Ms. Howard and Mr. Robinson. I appreciate your comments this evening. And like I said at the last meeting, this is one of those unfortunate circumstances that has happened before, where state of California has this mandate, a timeline and a responsibility for us to take action in a framework that typically doesn't represent how we do business in Temecula. Recognizing that, though, I think part of the motion this evening, and I think, you know, we have to be careful with our language here, but I think part of what I'd like to see happen this evening is that we also direct staff, city attorney and city clerk's office to really provide us with an in-depth analysis on what it means to have a commission or advisory board for the future, because I wholeheartedly agree with you. This is not the way we do things as a city, and it's unfortunate that once again we've been, you know, placed into a situation that you know, unfortunately doesn't allow us to do things the way we typically do in Temecula. So, you know, my commitment to both of you is to make sure that we ensure a robust process into the future. So I'd like to make that as part of our motion, recognizing that there are a lot of nuances and details, you know, in forming something like that. So I'd really like to be able to dig more into how that's been done in other cities, whether there's sort of a model representation of this that we can help glean from. And then, of course, you know, I think have a more robust public comment period related to this issue, so that we can, you know, really get your input again on that process. So, you know, it's unfortunate. I do apologize on, I guess, behalf of the state of California for, you know, the position we were put in, if that means anything to you. But certainly we need to rectify that situation moving forward. Second thing I think is interesting, and as I'm sitting here listening to this conversation, you know, the maps that we're drawing tonight are certainly just temporary. So, you know, as the next census rolls out in what, 2020, I believe, you know, we will have an opportunity to revisit this, and the demographics, you know, may change. Certainly new development and changes in the city will occur, and that will require us to look at the maps and the lines with a little bit more of an eye toward that future. One of the other things, though, and I wanted to ask, I should have asked this during the question period, I apologize, just occurs to me, is that, you know, our philosophies of fairness, protected class, the election process, our policies related to this change over time, and certainly have in the last 241 years we've been doing this experiment with democracy in the United States. And so I wanted to make certain that, you know, what we're doing here this evening isn't, you know, this is just an ordinance. We're just putting something into place right now that, you know, as our philosophies, as our opinions about things change, and as the laws potentially change along with that into the future, you know, we're definitely keeping an eye toward, you know, having, I think, our community respond to that. And what I'm getting at is, you know, today at this juncture, we all agree, or I should say our legislature agrees, that districts for, you know, cities of this size and throughout the state of California, districts are the appropriate thing. 50 years from now, it could be that, you know, this has turned out to be a failed experiment, and, you know, cities of this size are more appropriate in an at-large, you know, election instead. So I want to make sure that everybody, you know, sort of recognizes that this, you know, this is a fluid process and really does represent the will of our legislature, but also our I think, political philosophy, and both nationally and in California. So now let's talk about the colors of the maps, right? Because we're going to get to that as well. I tend to agree with Mr. Stewart for a lot of the reasons he brought up. I'd put in one caveat, though, and that is, you know, I like the idea that we can get back to, you know, more of a cooperation among our council members when we have more than one you know, district representing a community of interest. So I tend to agree with that. And then at the same time, any decisions that we do make as a council still require a vote of all 5 of us. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I want to make sure we're careful in our dialogue here this evening, because, you know, we're already moving toward this concept that, you know, while it's your district, your vote in your district is paramount compared to the vote of the other 4 members outside that district. And while I think we need to respect the opinions, you know, moving forward of that representative for that community, for that district, we also need to recognize that there are still 5 of us. And, you know, that we've seen, or at least I've seen, even at the county level, how that can work very negatively. So I just want to make sure that we're, you know, and I know we're all aware of that. We're just careful with our language and our understanding of what districts are moving forward. With regard to the orange map, I think a couple of things were highlighted to me that I think make that sort of a superior option. One of those is, at least for District 1, the district that I would be representing if into the future, there's a clear line of demarcation at Temecula Parkway. And comparing the yellow to the orange maps, the yellow map takes the bulk of that commercial space that's sort of associated with Wolf Creek and Red Hawk and you know, part of the Vale community and so forth, and moves it all into District 2 and sort of interestingly, you know, drops that line below what's clearly a line of demarcation. I think we all recognize Temecula Parkway as a clear line of demarcation within the city, and had been for, you know, a very long time as well. And so that is a concern of mine. And the other one, and I think Mr. Truax had mentioned this during his comments, is the fact that it takes a section of the Rancho Highlands and associates it with the communities across from Highway 15 in Old Town, and Highway 15 is a clear line of demarcation within the county. There isn't a clearer line as far as I'm concerned, and placing that community into the District 5, I think, is just sort of an odd issue with that map. So for those reasons, you know, and many others, if we need to get into a longer dialogue, I would support the orange version of this of these maps. Thank you.
Well, that puts me somewhere in the middle, doesn't it? Yeah, go purple. This is not an exercise that any of us enjoys. And I think, this got on my radar, I think as early as 3 years ago, maybe earlier than that. And the first time I heard about this, I was very distressed, but I wasn't concerned because I never considered Temecula to be a place that was at odds with giving everyone a fair and equal chance to run for office and be elected. And I really still feel that way, looking back at different councils and the different makeups of councils. Trends are going to come and go, and I always attributed victories in elections to those who, had a good name in the community and worked hard and campaigned hard and got a lot of support from their friends and neighbors. And apparently that's not the case, says the California Voting Rights Act. We certainly don't want to prevent anyone from being able to run for office and win. And I don't think that's been an intentional act in the city of Temecula. But tonight we aren't allowed to think in those terms because we've seen the history of what the Shankman lawsuits or the threats of the lawsuits have done, and there's really been no opposition to redistricting that has won the day. And there have been, I don't know, over 40 different cities that have converted because there really is no way to maintain at-large elections with the verbiage that is contained in the California Voting Rights Act. So we're not allowed to consider things like, was it an intentional act that prevented a protected class from winning? We can't think of that because it's not allowed under the California Voting Rights Act. It is allowed under the Federal Voting Rights Act. So here we are this evening. Temecula has always functioned as a unified council, and we have pretty heated arguments sometimes, and there have been years past where there have been some fantastically heated arguments on the council because everyone was passionate about his or her item. And when the city was young, there were so many things to consider. And I have to credit those early councils with doing, and staff that supported them with doing a fantastic job, and that's why we have the great city that we all love today. I think this council has worked in a unified process ever since I've been here, and I think I'm in my 12th year now. And our school board also functioned in very much the same way, but here we see the school board also changing. So, again, this is a difficult exercise. I don't want to do anything that divides Temecula because we've been so unified in our advancement of the city for all the right reasons, I think. And to me, this just divides Temecula. But I think this council has the opportunity to set the precedent to continue to work as a unified body for the benefit of the entire city. And I think that's what we've always considered. I can't think of Temecula any other way but my city. And even if if I'm assigned to District 3, which is where my residence is, I will still think of Temecula as an entire city because I trust this council to establish policies and procedures that we can uphold, while at least we are unified in that effort and holding office, to consider things like roads and parks and improvements and citywide amenities and things that affect the entire community, just as we always have. And I would also expect us to prioritize exactly the same way, with public safety first, infrastructure second, quality of life issues third, and everything else is just gravy, and we're blessed to be able to consider things that other cities can't consider or can't afford. So I definitely think we immediately need to establish those policies on how things will be considered and prioritized, and I don't expect it to be any different. As far as looking at the maps, I think everyone has agreed that the purple map didn't seem to be equitable. It is equitable in all the criteria necessary, but just the looks of the map, and I think it was Councilmember Comachero that said it appears that that the purple map gives so much so much land mass to one district. So we're down to the yellow and the orange maps, and from my district, there's very, very little change from one map to the other. So we have to consider how it impacts the rest of the city. So I am also looking at dividing lines and neighborhoods, which can be tricky. And I'm trying to switch back and forth between maps here, so bear with me a little bit. And I came into this meeting saying that I want to hear what residents and speakers have to say, and I came in thinking one thing, and I was leaning towards one area, but I find myself actually going a different direction now based on what people have said. So right now, I am also leaning towards the yellow map, just based on the way that it continues to group communities together. There are dividing lines that are not natural, but I think that, in some instances, that can't be helped. In other instances, I don't think it's going to matter all that much. For instance, Rancho Highlands is bordered by the freeway. They are always going to stay together as a community. Whether or not part of it bleeds into another district. Old Town is very strong, and the Old Town neighborhoods on Pujol Street and on the backsides, those neighborhoods are very strong. Right now, I'm leaning towards the yellow map. So, if anyone wants to add anything else, Mike?
Presuming it stays that way, I think there's a couple other things that we want to talk about, and I think one of those are what I brought up in relation to bringing back an agenda item for policies, or not that in 30 days we have policies, but that the council can give direction for you to do so, is my point.
Yes.
The other thing is regarding, pardon me?
No, I was just, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I guess I did. Maybe we should consider a subcommittee for that.
Maybe so, yeah. Yeah, that's true, and we can talk about it then. The other thing is the advisory board, which I'm not opposed to putting it in the motion, but I do want to just talk a little bit just about that. The city has always been one where it's included public input, and I think that shouldn't change. In all the things that we did, from the youth master plan to the quality of life master plan, the senior master plan, the special needs adjunct to the youth master plan, everything, the arts master plan, the parks and trails master plan, we all had charrettes and things like that and brought the public involved, and I think we should continue to do that. I would be against, however, appointing a formal board to make a recommendation to the council, only from the point of view that it adds another layer of well, it actually takes the job of your city council. I think we take maybe appointing a blue ribbon committee or something like that. We've done that in the past, like the general plan advisory committee, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But a formal board that gets together and decides, to make a recommendation, I think that's just a recipe. I consider, them making a recommendation that the council doesn't agree with, and at that point, what do you do with that? The advisory board says one thing, the council thinks of something else. It's got a layer in there that just doesn't need to be. But I think there needs to be a layer of citizen input. That's a fact. And that citizen input that spectrum of that citizen input should be broad and very diverse. So that's sort of my 2 cents. I just didn't want to make a motion that says we will have an advisory board, but I'm certainly open to the discussion.
I agree with you, Mike. And the city has a very strong track record and a history of opening things up to the community, seeking community input, actively seeking community input, and I would consider this no different. I mean, I want to hear what people have to say, and what people have to say tonight is going to be different than what people have to say once we decide on a map. So people will know what their boundaries are, and that may change, their opinions. But I still would think that the majority of Temecula residents would want to proceed with the same initiatives, the same priorities that we have all along, because they benefit all of us equally, and that's public safety, infrastructure, and quality of life issues. So I agree, and I can expound on the fact that Well, Randy, would you explain the process and why we didn't have time to form some type of ad hoc or some type of community committee in this instance? Would you just explain one more time the timeline that we were required to follow?
Correct. So we received the letter on March 27th. From the date of the receipt of the letter from the Schenkman firm, we had 45 days in which to go ahead and adopt a resolution of intent. If you do adopt a resolution of intent, you are safe harbored for an additional 90-day period from the date that you actually adopt the resolution of intent. During that 90 days, you need to conduct all of your public hearings, specifically 2 before the maps are drawn, 2 after the maps are drawn. You need to go through the exercise of drawing the maps with your demographer. You also need to go through the exercise of having that published for the requisite period of time and go ahead and adopt your ordinance. That is what brings us to this. So basically 45 days plus 90 days is all you have for that safe harbor period.
Okay, thank you. So any other input, gentlemen?
Madam Mayor, just an observation
Go
too,
ahead.
a practical observation. When the maps get redrawn in 2020, you'll have a situation where 3 council members would have already ran for election in 2018, so they wouldn't be standing for election in 20. And then the 2 seats that are up in 2020 would have already won the district that based on the map we're choosing tonight. My point in bringing that up is the redistricting at that point would take time. It would take place sometime, I'm assuming, in the first quarter of 2021. Is that what I'm saying? In which case, the politics of it should be fairly removed, with the exception of the 3-seat cycle, which would come up again 2 years later, I guess is my point. So I just wanted to put that out there. There's no gerrymandering at this point going on. It just can take place at that time.
May I?
Sure.
I'd actually disagree with that statement, Mike. And I think the reason why is because we've, how do I say this diplomatically or carefully? Peter slapped me on the back of the head when I go off the rails here, but the reason I disagree with that is because there are, the way the lines are drawn right now, regardless of map, there are folks who have in the past and will in the future choose to run for a city council seat, and certainly the dynamic of the district changes it from what we've traditionally done as an at-large. And the concern that I have is that you inadvertently could be shifting lines, especially those that, are these nuanced lines like the 79 or so that I was talking about earlier, or along the 15. And those, if we compare these maps to one another, in these areas that I think are sort of our issue, where the line gets drawn and why we have a preference for one or the other, you could inadvertently take, someone out of a potential race in the upcoming election, and then by the time we get around to, drawing maps in the following, you flip the lines back in the other direction, and you could be doing that for, quite some time, every 10 years or so. But in the first iteration of these maps, and then the next one following that, you run a risk of sort of disenfranchising individuals within the community based on how those lines are going to look. And the reason I bring that up is because if you look at sort of our largest potential future development projects that are sitting in the queue right now, including Altair, as just an example, that one sits in District 5, and during that time period, that project may have some of the more substantial changes in population within the city.
You think Altair is going to be built to any degree?
No, and I'm not.
By 2020?
No,
that's impossible.
Well, and I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying that in this time period, there's going to be some changes and some proposals and things that move forward. There's a lot of projects, and so if you look at that, how do the larger of those projects that we see on our radar influence, future lines and districts? And so you look at, some of those, and that's why I thought the purple map was probably, again, the most problematic, because it took, some of the largest areas for future development in the city and put it all in one district, which meant that one, immediately just sort of doesn't work almost as soon as some of these projects start to come online, right? And so anyway, so that's my only hesitation with, our decisions here tonight, is that, we have to keep a keen eye toward not just where the lines are drawn, but the politics of it as well.
And I agree, and I don't want to debate what you said, but isn't
No,
that the
you're
purpose
off now. There you go.
Isn't that the purpose of redistricting every 10 years for that very reason? Because there's going to be growth and there's going to be change. So, politically, in redistricting, you're always going to have winners and losers. I mean, it's the nature of the beast, I think. So as long as we do it without that in mind, then it is arbitrary, and that's going to happen as it happens. So I'm sorry for that. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor,
Sir.
the only comment that I would make, since I was invited by Mr. Ron, is when you get to 2020 or after that census, you're going to have a lot more time
Yes.
to debate the lines and to receive more citizen input, regardless of what the method is, so that a lot of the potential concerns you're going to have time to deal with at that time.
But I guess that's part of that makes my point, is that at that point it potentially becomes more political than it does without that sort of more robust citizen input and debate.
Again, though, you're obligated by law to do the redistricting at that time, and then every 10 years thereafter.
Well, let's ask, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. Let's ask a practical question. Come the election of 2020 occurs, okay? Probably in December 2020, a new council is seated with the 2 members to join the 3. That's the cycle you and I are on, Mr. Stewart. Then 2021 comes around, and we'll take up that issue in earnest of redistricting. Now, let's talk about that. How soon, and I don't know the answers to these questions, but let's, again, dive into this. When does the census start to occur? Does it start to occur? Do they start taking census data in 2020? Is that when they start taking the census data? And when is the census data done being collected and released for the use of drawing districts? Does that occur in the first quarter of 2021, the second quarter, the third quarter, or is it not even available till 2022?
Yeah, I'm not aware of the specific dates that information is available for redistricting purposes. I do know in the past that date has varied with respect to the exact date that it's available for redistricting. So they go through and they have set dates for gathering census data, and then when the reports are released, I'm not aware of that particular date. We would be subject to, whenever we receive the reports with the official census data, that is when we could go ahead and undertake the districting process. However, with respect to community input, in anticipation of receipt of that data, we can already start preliminarily doing some of the workshops for outreach and saying what's working in your district, what's not working in your district, what would you like to see in your district, those kinds of things.
So, if I may, Madam Mayor, Mr. Dorsey.
Just real quick,
Yeah.
one thing we can do when we bring back the discussion on the citizen input during that redistricting is to get for you the census data, the dates that it came out over the last 30 years, the last 3 censuses. But keeping in mind that we don't have any control over the federal government and when it comes out.
And I guess in some way it kind of proves the point I brought up. Even though you strive not to be political, it ends up being political no matter what. And I'll use just an example. Let's see. Let's say one of the people who win in 2020 is ever running. Let's just pretend it's you. Okay, you have every. And I'm not saying you do this. I'm just using you as an example. You can use me as an example. Although I've been around long enough, and I probably won't be around the 6th term, so we'll see what happens. But the bottom line is you have every incentive to ensure lines are drawn so that you are less opposed. And that's political, just that simple. And it's unfortunate. It just is. And as much as somebody would be virtuous, and I expect you to say, oh, but I wouldn't make my decision based on that, it just is. It's just how it is. That's where the whole problem of gerrymandering started. So that's why this whole thing is problematic. This whole going to districts is problematic. It inserts a level of politics where politics didn't exist.
Can I make a point?
Sure.
Okay, let's go back to the map selection, and let me point out something in the orange map. If you notice the bootleg of Rohrpow Ranch, that is going to be a development one day. And what I'm trying to do with the orange map, I'm trying to create continuity so we're not shifting borders or district maps constantly. And that's going to overload me. I mean, District 4 now is going to take on a few thousand more people, which means I'm going to have to, part of that, probably that corner down there on Chardonnay Hills is going to drop into 3. And so it's going to shift the map, but it's going to shift it slightly. Whereas on the yellow map, it's going to be worse. It's going to create more of an issue because I've got too much. I don't know. When I look at the orange map, I think going forward, continuity, we got to look at what's left to be built out. And Rohrpow Ranch is left to be built out. There's Altair off of District 5. There's several pockets where District 3 built out, District 2 built out.
No, actually, District 2 isn't, because there's, on 79 South, there's development along at Butterfield, so.
Right. So, but we're looking at a map that there's a lot of built-out areas with the exception of Rohrpow Ranch. That's kind of like a wild card up there that could happen in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years.
But isn't that going to happen? I mean, it's going to happen anyway, and we're going to have to redistrict accordingly.
Right, exactly. But I'm looking for continuity. I don't want people like say all those people who are on the Winchester corridor, who is in the yellow map, who is in my district. But once Rohrpow Ranch comes into play, I'm probably going to have to lose those people, and because now the balance is going to be shifting towards Rohrpow Ranch. So with the orange map, that particular section is already another district. And so I'm not going to have to basically disassociate or not represent those people anymore. So that's what I'm looking at. As far as I'm concerned, the orange map creates a continuity going forward that, to me, looks more balanced. But
Madam Mayor, if I may, and then, yeah. I don't disagree with you, except there's another element that you have to add into this, and that is the protected classes
Correct. That's
location.
the whole reason for the discussion.
And so, I'll give you for instance, Altair gets built, and that's going to change the dynamic of the protected class that is going to be in, what is that? Altair will be in District 5. It's going to dramatically change the dynamic in District 5. And you just don't know where that protected class is going to be, how that lays out, where they end up moving, no one knows.
But as we know in Temecula, the protected class lives everywhere in Temecula. There is no area the protected class congregates. So I envision, Altair is going to be the same thing. You're going to have a very mixed bag of people living there. Same with Rohrpow Ranch. I don't think you're going to see a change in the balance of the protected class based on who's moving in, because they're all moving in. I mean, it's a very well balanced city.
That's what
we're
makes this
seeing.
whole
exactly. It makes it stupid, but plain and simple.
Jeff.
I think it's a good analysis, Stu, but I, with all due respect, I think there's a fallacy in there.
Yeah.
If we look at, say, Rohrpow is a good example. If you look at the build-out condition, we have no idea when that's going to occur.
Right.
Rohrpow was approved in 2002.
Right.
Now, granted, we came through recession, but that could happen again. I hope not.
Right.
But so We have no idea. So if we look at that as saying that should come out and go somewhere else because there's going to be another 1,000 homes there, well, what happens until that happens? And that could be another 10 years or more. Then that district is underpopulated.
No. I'm not saying drop RORPA. I'm just saying, just as far as being a balanced map, Orange, basically there's a high density right along Temecula Park, not Temecula, Winchester, on that edge right there of Meadowview. And that being there will offset the fact that eventually Royal Paw Ranch is going to build out. And I won't lose those people, because in the yellow map, I'm representing all those people along that 79 corridor. And if and when Royal Paw ranches, I'm going to lose those people, almost guaranteed. So I would assume them being part of District 5 from the get-go. That way I'm not going to have to, and if I'm going to lose somebody in the orange map, it's going to be probably most likely the bottom corner that follows Rancho California Road out, because there's a grouping down there that is also high density, but it's more conducive to number 3 anyways. So to me, it just makes more sense going forward. That's all I'm looking at.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do. But at the end of the day, this is going to sound funny because it's a zero-sum game. It's
Right.
really not. It's an expanded sum game.
Right.
But if your district is going to maintain some of that, it's going to impact another district.
Right.
So it's squeezing the balloon.
Absolutely.
So you're making the case that I'll say protecting, I don't mean that in a negative way.
Right.
District 4 at the expense of other districts. So how do you do it in a way that's totally equitable?
And District 3
I think we're seeing
District
it.
3 is not going to grow, because District 3 is, for all intents and purposes, built out. So if District 3, let's just say, has 20,000 people, and let's say if they're all roughly 20,000 people, what happens when Rorapah gains another 2,000, or when District number 5 gains everything that's in Altair, another 2,500, 2,600, and my district, or what the district that I'm in right now, is going to retain, so everything's going to have to shift a little
Right,
bit.
which
It's going to spread. It's inevitable.
Which is
everything.
really why I like the orange map, because what it does, if you look at the orange map, I have that little corner on the south east side that is in my district. And if a bubble is going to be squished and I'm going to lose a section, that makes perfect sense for me to lose that little corner of the Chardonnay Hills subdivision versus anywhere else on the map.
Yeah, but if Rorapah builds out, you're going to lose a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be up to 7.
Oh, exactly.
up to
And that's what I'm
Rancho
saying. I'm going to lose that portion over there on Winchester, too. So,
You could lose Meadowview.
no.
I mean, it's all based on numbers,
Right,
so.
sure, yeah.
I guess the real bottom line is we can guess all we want.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, and it's good. It's a good discussion. I
Sure.
mean, and I think every point is well made and makes sense. But the bottom line is, in the next 2 years and then 10 years after that, it's just speculation.
Yep.
Matt?
Yeah, but beyond, and I agree. I think we're being handed 3 maps that all have a potential to meet the obligation, but all have some nuanced differences that, yeah, and it all could change, and a lot of what we're talking about into the future is speculation. 2 issues, though. One that isn't speculation is that I still say, for at least the Southern District, removing that space and drawing that line below Temecula Parkway, I just think is it's the worst thing that you could do for that district, right? And the reason being is because we all recognize that Temecula Parkway is part of that natural line of demarcation, and drawing that line below there and following what I'm assuming is the creek, having looked at the maps in a closer sort of analysis, using that as the line of demarcation, a creek, it doesn't make any sense. And part of what the analysis, at least from my perspective, included that focus on natural lines, but also the balance of residential, commercial, and communities of like interest. And there is no more area of like interest to all of us who live on the south end of town than that commercial space, because that's where we all tend to end up for, you know, the local retail, at least within that, you know, nearby area.
I think-
And then the other issue, of course, is that demarcation along Highway 15. I think that, you know, that again is one of those natural, very obvious marks on the landscape, and I think it's a disservice at this juncture, at this point in time, to split that community and place them into a district with Old Town across Highway 15. You know, there's other, obviously, nuances within, you know, all of these lines, but those two, I think, are probably the most glaring issues in my mind for the yellow map.
Get a little lighter.
Yeah.
Do we all realize that we're already fighting for our districts?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
No,
Well,
absolutely.
I'm not.
The very
Yeah.
thing that we don't want to
Well,
happen.
I'm not. I
is
mean,
what's happening.
I'm trying to mitigate here for equity, and it's interesting that we're all talking in terms of, we're looking at this from a governance standpoint, when really the whole purpose of this is to provide equity to protected classes, and any redistricting would be done based on any movements or shifts in where those protected classes are located. And then they still try to maintain continuity between city streets and HOAs if possible, and neighborhoods. But the primary reason for doing this is to provide equity for the protected classes. And so I think we need to focus our discussion on how, you know, future iterations are going to do that. And that is the purpose of the redistricting, to make sure that we continue to be in compliance with the California Voting Rights Act by providing equal opportunities for those individuals. So while we'd all like to keep, you know, neighborhoods together and what are going to be districts that we're assigned to, the bigger point is, does the map reflect that equity called for in the California Voting Rights Act?
Well, don't they all? I mean, isn't that the point? Right?
They do,
So, I
but-
mean, you know,
but we
according
don't-
to the analysis.
But
that-
we don't know how that's going, but we don't know how future, you know, growth is going to change that dynamic.
But I guess that's my point, is we don't know.
And what at that time?
But from my perspective, the orange map provides better equity at this point in time for like communities of interest, and that balance between, you know, the neighborhoods and commercial access and so forth. And the guess into the future, I know we're all going to run our own calculus on what we think Temecula is going to look like in the next, you know, 10 or 20 years, right? But we don't know. And so from my perspective, I think the orange map provides the best opportunity at this point in time of balancing those equities beyond just the, you know, because we all recognize we're here because of the protected class issue. But beyond that, there are other metrics that we're provided that we're looking at. And you know, I believe that the orange map provides that best balance overall for the city. And I'll say too, well, anyway, I'll stop there.
Are you sure?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, no further comments, and Randy, we can turn this over to you for the process.
Okay. If council has wrapped up their deliberation, at this time we'll move forward with the map adoption and ordinance introduction process. The map adoption process will be done by voice vote. The ordinance introduction process will be done by electronic vote. With respect to the map adoption process, each council member by voice vote will be asked to state their preference for one of the three maps: purple, yellow, or orange. After each council member selection is recorded, the map receiving 3 or more votes will be selected as the map for adoption. In the event that a single map does not receive 3 or more votes after the first voice vote, the map receiving the lowest amount of votes will be eliminated and a second voice vote will be conducted. After a map is selected, the city attorney will then introduce the ordinance, and an electronic vote will be taken to approve the first reading of the ordinance. We'll now go ahead and proceed with the voice vote to select the preferred map. Please indicate your preference for one of the 3 maps, purple, yellow, or orange, when asked for your voice vote. Mayor Edwards.
Yellow.
Mayor Pro Tem Ron.
Orange.
Councilmember Comachero.
Yellow.
Councilmember Nagar,
Yellow.
Councilmember Stewart.
Orange.
Okay, based on the voice vote, the preferred map, as demonstrated by 3 votes, is the yellow map. At this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to City Attorney Thorson to introduce the ordinance.
Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, this is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Temecula, amending Chapter 2.08 of the Temecula Municipal Code, providing for the election of 5 members of the City Council by districts, establishing the boundaries and identification number of each district, and establishing the election order of each district. And this ordinance to be introduced will include the changes that I indicated at the beginning of this item and the yellow map.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All right, so let me get back to my other screen. Okay, so we have buttons.
I can't get, okay.
Are you, go back to the main menu, yeah. So, let me second. Now, you should get a, there you
Got
go.
it. Everybody vote?
Yeah, but
Yellow map.
it's not showing yet.
In the ordinance, and then the ordinance will include the yellow map.
Okay, all right.
Well, I don't have a final tally.
There it
There we
is.
go.
You do now.
Okay, so we have 3 ayes and 2 noes for yellow.
Well, no, that
No,
wouldn't be
for
accurate.
the ordinance.
For the ordinance.
For the ordinance.
Oh, 1, 2, yes.
For the ordinance
so
introduction,
that's right.
and as a part of that
That's right.
ordinance introduction, it is the yellow map that is the exhibit.
Okay.
Yes.
So we got 3 ayes and 2 noes.
And that's Council Members Ron and Council Member Stewart voting no.
Yes, okay, so, make some notes here. Okay, so next order of business would be what, Peter?
Well, it's up to you. I know there was,
Mayor, if, during the discussion, there were several comments about directing staff to come back with some research and introductory language as far as formation of an advisory committee or a district commission.
So,
Would you like to have a separate motion to do that, as well as there was discussion
Establishing
of about
policies.
establishing policies?
Right.
Start the development of policies.
Madam Mayor, if I may, maybe we can do 2 in one swoop. If staff can bring back an agenda item, I would say in 30 days, but if it's 6 weeks, it's okay. That agenda item will be to discuss policies and procedures moving forward for the, to go ahead and to begin a vote to begin the process of creating policies and procedures for the cohesiveness of keeping the city intact and cohesive as it relates to district. So that would be first part of the motion. The second part of the motion, and maybe a different agenda item, I'll leave it up to you guys, but a different agenda item would also be to discuss moving forward with a advisory committee, blue ribbon committee, whatever the council's discretion is at the time, having that discussion.
And establishing community outreach.
And community outreach. And again, I'm saying, we can take 2 votes if you want, but I think it should be 2 different agenda items.
Okay.
Can I add in?
Sure.
Just given that technically nobody's actually representing a district till after elections in 2018, maybe we can extend that timeline for the city clerk's office to, do the analysis, right? I mean, we've got opportunity here to do more than just a 5-week or whatever you said, 6 week.
No,
No,
what
I
I
think
mean,
we're just establishing the will to discuss the formation of.
yeah.
Right, but I think there's some, maybe I'm wrong, Randy, speak up, but I want to
what-
give you plenty of time to be able to do the
Right.
analysis that you need to be able to come back with.
So what I'm hearing is in 4 to 6 weeks, we will bring back 2 separate items to receive general direction from the city
Yes.
council. The
Yes.
first one will be general direction regarding creating policies and procedures and perhaps appointing a subcommittee to work with staff as we move forward through that process. And then the second one will be really general direction to staff to go ahead and start researching the policies and procedures and get your input on what some of that stuff could look like.
Yeah, I think on the first part, the policies and procedures, I don't think anybody's looking for a set of policies and
Right.
procedures.
Right.
For me, I see this as almost like a master planning effort that may take 6 months or a year to get done. There's an awful lot that has to go in there. So we need to put a process in place to get there, get to the end. But we don't need the policies and procedures in 6 weeks.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Knowing that any future city council can reverse every single thing that we do. Yes, and hopefully, hopefully we'll stay cohesive. Okay, so we have that direction, right? And you already make a motion?
Actually, if we could
Mike,
go ahead
was
and
that
have
your
a
motion,
vote.
or-
That's my motion.
I'll second.
And thank you. And just one other thing for discussion. It would be good to try to work on those policies and procedures before the year's end. I just would be my preference, that it not trail into 2018, and it not be mired with an election year. I think we just need to do that. And then the other issue, I think we have plenty of time to discuss that and to do it properly, planning charrettes and things like that. So I'd like to, those comments, I'll amend my motion. Would you second them?
I'm not sure. I like that.
Go ahead.
I think it has to be organic and kind of go where it goes. I think if we mandate that it be done by the end of the year, I'm okay with saying let's attempt to get it done by the end of the year. But if we get to the end and it's not finished and then we struggle to, make bad decisions.
Fair enough. What it is I just want to emphasize its importance.
and I
Okay, so I'll tell you what, leave my motion intact. I think we've said what needed to be said, and no need for you to amend.
What we're trying to intimate is that we want to mandate unity in council action for those things that impact the city as a whole, like infrastructure and road maintenance and things like that, without favoring any particular area. That they be done scientifically if they,
Yeah,
And mandating unity is really difficult, but that's what we're trying, we want to,
When it comes to things like, I'm just toying with it now, and I won't get too far afoot, Peter, but I'm just toying with it when it comes to things like Old Town, the freeway, the mall, the Uptown Jefferson Plan. All of these things need to be considered in the context of citywide impact.
correct.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
There you go. He's
Stop
telling
it.
me those are in his district.
Stop
All
it.
of those things need to be considered in the context of having an effect on the entire city, as does CDGG, as does budgeting for parks, rehab and capital maintenance on parks, rehab and capital maintenance on roads. In other words, I do not want to have discussions, or I'm hoping to avoid future councils from having discussions of who can get 3 votes to get the most road improvements
Right.
done, just because they managed to form a cabal.
And we've
Okay?
always done it scientifically, assessing the road structure, down to the base and things like
Right.
that. So, and as long as we maintain those policies, it will continue to be done in an orderly fashion.
And interestingly enough, Madam Mayor, I think if we put a 4/5 requirement for any change, it makes it more difficult to change in the future.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the key. 'Cause-
So,
Something occurred to me. What we're talking about is not that dissimilar from the regional boards and commissions that many of us have sat on over
Right.
the years, because you go to RCOG, you go to RCTC or RTA, you learn early on that although you're sent there by your city, you take your city hat off.
Right.
And you're voting on and discussing what's best for, in that case, the county or whatever
the region.
is. And I think that's very similar to what we're talking about.
and if I may make one statement so nothing we discuss can be misconstrued. Our desire is to comply with the Voting Rights Act
Right.
and elect council members by district so that nobody is disenfranchised.
Right.
That's our desire.
Very good.
And if we can just take a voice vote
You
on
got
that,
that?
that would be great.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. All right, are we finished with this item?
Yes.
Okay,
Madam
so,
Mayor, I need to leave the council meeting for reasons I think you know and understand. I wish everybody well.
sure, thanks. Yeah, we're thinking about you.
Yeah.
Okay, so board and commission reports, what do you got? Zach, we'll start on the left.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Just a couple quick items. Got a little feedback from some residents and people that I know in the community about how much they appreciate the major S signs that we're seeing out and about. Just knowing where that money's going, where it's Slurry Seal, the library, whatnot, they're appreciative of it, and they wanted me to pass that along. And then the 4th of July, I have a slide up here. We've participated in this as a commission for years, and our family has thoroughly enjoyed it every single year. I mean, it is one of those days where we truly come together as a community, and it's just a really good day. As you can see, everyone there had a blast. It continued on into the afternoon with barbecues in the sports park, and then on into the night with the fireworks. So just really want to thank the city, thank Director Hawkins and his staff, and really everyone that makes this happen. It's just a fantastic day in our community. So, thank you.
Guess what, Zach? Next year, you guys are riding in convertibles, and the council is driving the golf carts.
You know, I don't think we're going to give up those carts very easily. It was a lot of fun.
I know, that's why we're taking them. Thank you very much, Zach. Okay, Mr. Telesio.
Nothing, Madam Mayor, this evening.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Hagel?
Yes, our commission dealt with a matter of Cali Pina Colada, which is south of Delray Road and north of La Serena Way. Cali Pina Colada has 27 homes on it, and there are 3 streets off of it that have another 33 homes. Cali Pina Colada does about 4,000 cars a day, which is pretty substantial. The 2 goals were to reduce the number of cars driving on that road and reduce speeds. Staff had a number of workshops with the residents and HOA there, and I'd like to thank them for all the effort that they've put into that. This has been a pretty tricky challenge to come up with a group of solutions.
Since I was on the traffic commission.
Yeah.
When we talked about the same thing.
Yeah, this conversation has been ongoing for many, many, many years. Yes. The solution is going to include a stop sign, which will come before you in the not too long from now. But there's a number of solutions that'll be tested and hopefully solves at least some of the problem. And if not, we will substitute and go on to other solutions. So this may be, you know, a 1 or 2 year project to see what works there. And you probably have noticed a lot of slurry sealing going on some of our major roads, and certainly a lot of neighborhoods. And I know I've heard a lot of great comments, and it's a very, very welcome solution to some of the road issues.
Yeah, thank you, Measure S, for accelerating the slurry seal. And thank you for continuing to work with the residents on Calle Pina Colada. It has been an ongoing issue that was really created before Temecula was incorporated as a city, and we inherited it. And so we've been working with residents for years, off and on for years, trying to, you know, decrease the volumes and the speeds of traffic on that street. And we have tried lots of different things, and so I'm glad that they're trying some new ideas now. Okay, thank you. So, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Assistant City Manager.
He's on vacation, and he's asked me to continue the tradition of his city manager minutes. So just a couple of infrastructure updates. Most everyone has seen the I-15 Temecula Parkway interchange is well underway. Over the next couple of weeks, in addition to the activities that can be seen taking place during the daytime hours outside the traveled way, work on the freeway that requires temporary lane closures or ramp closures will take place at night beginning tonight. What time is it? Got another hour. And over the next few days, the next week, nighttime activities will continue. Check the website for details. It's updated regularly. Project updates and project detour plans are on the website. People with questions can call the hotline or We have a informational open house and public meeting. Next slide, please, Jonathan. Informational public meeting being held in our conference center here at City Hall on Monday, the 24th, the day before our next City Council meeting, at 6:30 in the evening to 8:30 p.m. Project staff will be providing an overview of the project, walk attendees through the project phasing, and answer questions that they may have regarding the project. The Arterial Road Slurry Seal project that Bob mentioned is nearly complete. Our contractor should finish striping Winchester and Jefferson this week. Slurry sealing on Temecula Parkway is also complete. They'll lay out the revised striping plan the next couple of nights, which will then be followed by striping the roadway. Our Margarita Rehab project is underway. The contractor's been working on the intersections over the next couple of weeks. Work will be focused on removing and repaving the segment between Pava and Santiago. New sidewalks are in place along Old Town Front Street, north of the post office, and along 5th Street. Our contractor is now working on ancillary work, including street lights, street trees, and paving 5th Street. Birdsall Sports Park. Removal of the old field started this week at Patricia H. Birdsall Sports Park. All replacement work will be complete by August the 15th in time for the new school year. Here's a fascinating fact. Our supplier, Field Turf, recently came out with a new product that they installed in several football stadiums, including Gillette Field, the home of the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. They've upgraded the turf being installed on our championship field to that same product at no cost to the city. Right. So if you're playing out there on that field, you're playing on the same product as Tom Brady.
Who?
Make us as good. Yeah.
Kidding.
Residential slurry seal projects, again, thank you to the commissioners for making note of that. Measure S afforded us the ability to slurry seal several neighborhoods throughout the city. Work on Harveston is nearing completion. They plan to move towards Serafina neighborhood next. Motorists can also see some thoroughfares such as La Serena, North General Kearney, and Moraga getting prepared to be treated. And finally, the last place to learn about these updates and many more around the city is our website and our Facebook page. The Temecula Parkway Interchange, as I mentioned, has its own dedicated website hotline as well. And with that, that concludes our report.
So, Madam City Clerk, let's reflect on the next agenda. That would be the city manager's 3 minutes and 22 seconds. Instead of
For a 1-minute update.
the manager's minutes. Yeah, that was great. There's a lot going on, and we want to make sure we cover everything, so thank you. So we will adjourn. Peter will adjourn. Okay, after you. Go ahead.
We had a closed session. We have no actions to report under the Brown Act for those 3 items.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to remember Mr. Fox and thank him for all of his service to the city as we adjourn. So could I have a motion, please?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And we stand adjourned.